disruptive.
Weird thing to happen. So there's been a growing rally call for the release of the Epstein files. The thing that we were promised with the Trump administration, that people had this sense that maybe there was a possibility that this administration, among all the previous administrations that didn't follow suit, that maybe this time things were going to look up, that maybe we're actually going to get some accountability. Remember they said transparency? Well, it turns out they were just as slum as any of the other administrations, that they were never going to release this information. They keep trying to cover it up. And people are saying enough is enough, that they tried to hide this with Trump. They've hid this with Obama. They've hid this with Joe Biden. They've hid this with the Clintons. They've held this with George W. Bush. Enough is enough. The secrecy needs to be, revealed, that there's far too many victims, that the continued exploitation is still happening. And as I stated, and as we've been revealing, that the whole reason the cover-up of the Epstein files exists and why they kept it in the dark for so long doesn't really have to do with the, Peter files themselves. Doesn't really have to do with the child, exploitation, the sex trafficking, even though that is heinous on its own, like having that ring of, exploiting young minors. That is just awful. That is just disgusting. That needs to be stopped immediately. But the reason they kept this under the dark is because of the power it exudes from it. The power, the ability to blackmail each other with this kind of incriminating information. That's what we discovered with Whitney Webb, who published the book One Nation Under Blackmail. The reason these, networks exist is to blackmail and control each other, so we can deceive each other, so that powerful individuals can rise against even more powerful individuals, and they can exploit each other to gain dominance. And that's one of the reasons why, no matter who's in office, even with Donald Trump, even with the promises that he made, was never going to release this. But there is some good news with this that I want to reveal. So, according to USA Today, they released this article. It says, no leniency, no deals. Epstein victims speak as pressure grows to release the files. Victims of Jeffrey Epstein urged the House to force the release of more investigative files. President Trump called the Epstein for a Democratic hoax. A hoax that for quite some time he campaigned on. You can't really call something a hoax when you campaign to release the information. You can't really call the files not there when you said that it's on their desk. It just shows what hypocrites, what pathetic hypocrites they are. They can't even lie with reasonable actions. So it says, women who say they were sexually abused by the late disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein spoke out in an emotional press conference where they called for the House full release of the criminal investigative files in the case of September 3rd. The demands pose a challenge for President Donald Trump, and Republican Congress leaders for years demanded more information about Epstein, a former friend of the president, but now say full disclosure could hurt Epstein's victims. That's what they claim, that if we release this information, it's going to hurt the victims. The victims. I think it's going to hurt the clients that were part of it more than the victims. That's what they're protecting. Not the innocent, young girls, young boys, the people that were trafficked intentionally to these rich, scummy, putrid group, this cabal of master criminals. It's not to protect them, it's to protect the clients. But several survivors of Epstein's abuse said they supported an effort by Representatives Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Ro Khanna of California to force a House vote. House Speaker Mike Johnson said a vote could force the Justice Department to release more documents is no longer necessary after a House committee made public 33,295 pages of subpoenaed records on September 2nd, which House Democrats said they're overwhelmingly just previously released files. Trump called demands for more disclosure a Democratic hoax. Victims met privately September 2nd with members of the House Oversight and Reform Committee to describe their abuse, leaving Representative Nancy Mace, herself a survivor of sexual assault, teary and hyperventilating. Epstein died by suicide in jail on August 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, USA Today, they have to peddle the, official narrative because they can't really release that information because, again, it's all connected to a broader, more powerful dynamic that as much as, it is about sex trafficking, especially children, it has more to do with the fact of blackmail. And that's become more and more obvious. And they want to keep that structure because if they lose that, if more information is released to the public and awareness of this power-hungry elites, this blackmail cabal, these just insidious creatures that really roam the earth and control the world as we speak, then their power goes away. Then the structure that has kept, capitalism and Western homogeny and it would all dissipate because of this. So that's exactly why even someone like Donald Trump, who said numerous times he was going to release the Epstein files, is coming clean saying, no, we're not going to release it. Why? Because he knows, not just because he may be on the list, whether or not he's on the list is irrelevant, but the fact that this is what's controlling the people. This is what's controlling the power. This is what the powerful interests, this is what they exude, using the blackmail and deception of Epstein clients and the power that brings in. So, of course, they're not going to release this information, but luckily there are some people that are willing to address this. So, the rabbit hole points out, any and all Jeffrey Epstein files should be released to the public. Americans deserve to be given all available information and determine for themselves what happened. This would be a great move for public transparency. Leaving it to the victims is an abdication, abdication of responsibility and opens up more risk of humors and false allegations. It will be best for everyone involved once any documents still being withheld are made publicly aware. So that should be the obvious point there, that they should just release the documents. Doesn't matter if Trump's on it or Bill Clinton or, who they're trying to cover up. They should just release the documents regardless. And I've made the argument that it should be an international situation, that all the countries should be aware of this, not just America, because while Jeffrey Epstein was an American financier and Ghislaine Maxwell was tied to Jeffrey Epstein was not the mastermind behind this. Jeffrey Epstein was just a puppet or a pawn in a larger, broader scheme that involves other international dignitaries. And that is why I think Canada, the UK, Australia, and so many other people that have victims involved in sex trafficking, we have seen numerous reports all around the world about this, should be involved in getting the Jeffrey Epstein file list out and available to the public. That this is an international crime. This is not just an American and being involved with, Peter files. This is about the entirety of the world. That there's victims all around this earth that are part of this greater, huge cabal of sex trafficking, of human smuggling, of, child exploitation, of being abused by powerful entities for the sole purpose of blackmail and deceit. So I'm more kind of shocked that not many countries outside the United States are willing to speak up about this. And it's kind of just embarrassing. It's kind of embarrassing because we know that there's victims that were part of Jeffrey Epstein that came from all parts of the world. I mean, Australian media was where I found out about Jeffrey Epstein. As soon as the first arrest was made in his Florida estate in West Palm Beach, 60 Minutes, Australia, did a whole segment about it. That's how I first discovered about Jeffrey Epstein and the criminal syndicate of sex trafficking. Why wouldn't Australia want to be a part of this investigation? Why are they staying quiet? Why is the UK staying quiet? Well, we know because of Prince Andrew. We know that the royal family's involved. We know that there's bankers and billionaires within the European states that they're not going to leak out information. And we know that Canadian billionaires and politicians are also backed in this. We know the Trudeau family is connected to the Rockefellers and sex trafficking and Jeffrey Epstein and so on. Again, it's a very big club that's a part of this. So here is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was a part of this event, and everyone's trying to demonize her because, oh, Marjorie Taylor Greene is going against, Republicans and siding with Democrats and siding with this Democrat coax. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to explain here why she's at this event as a Republican, because she, much like Thomas Massie, the only two prominent people that I know that are willing to fight for Americans. And considering that a lot of Americans were abused in the sex trafficking involving Jeffrey Epstein, they're willing to put their differences aside and willing to be at a rally alongside with Democrats to fight for the release of the Epstein files. That was a campaign promise that Trump even made. So here's what Marjorie Taylor Greene says.
Shame falls on every single person that coldly turned a blind eye to their abuse. The shame falls on every single person that enabled it. The shame falls on every single person that took money to continue it. And the shame falls on the people in power over the past several decades that protected the monster, Jeffrey Epstein, and his cabal that continued a nightmare. Those people deserve the shame. And today we are coming forward and we are going to fight like hell for these women, because we have to fight like hell for those that are enduring sexual abuse and are living in a prison of shame. Anyone that is being abused, it is not your fault. You should live with no guilt or fear or shame. All of the fault belongs to the evil people that do these things to the innocent. This is the most important fight we can wage here in Congress, is fighting for innocent people that never received justice. And the women behind me have never received justice. And do you want to know why? It's because Jeffrey Epstein somehow was able to walk among the most rich, powerful people, not only in America, but foreign countries. Yesterday, I heard countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and even Israel, and other countries. The truth needs to come out, and the government holds the truth. The cases that are sealed hold the truth. Jeffrey Epstein's estate holds the truth. The FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA holds the truth. And the truth we are demanding come out on behalf of these women, but also as a strong message to every innocent child, teenager, woman, and man that is being held captive in abuse. This should never happen in America, and it should never be a political issue that divides us. And I want to thank Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie for doing something brave, crossing political boundaries for a very important fight. And I'm honored to join both of them. And I'm honored that Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert signed the discharge petition along with myself. And I asked my Republican colleagues not to choose just one path for justice and transparency and accountability, but I asked my Republican colleagues to choose every path for justice and accountability and transparency.
So there you go there. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene explaining why she was there. She's, putting her differences aside because, obviously the victims that have been abused is far greater than any politicized, calculation you can make of this. When people say that, oh, well, it's only Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Barack Obama that are part of this, and they're the ones that should be investigated, not, Donald Trump, or, Donald Trump's on this list, but we shouldn't be looking elsewhere. The fact that they're taking an issue like this, that we know that there's predominant figures all about. And as I stated, that this is why it's an international issue. This shouldn't be just America. This should involve every country having some form of investigation to stop the mass amounts of sex trafficking, especially with young minors, that affect every country on earth. And it still continues on to this day. It still continues on. And that's why this has become such a alerting issue, and why so many people harp on this, why I still continue to bring attention to this. Because I know people will say, like, well, why are you still bringing this up? Like, there's more important things to worry about. Auto pen! They still want to talk. Joe Biden, the auto pen! Why aren't you talking about that? Why aren't you talking about Obama lying about Russiagate? One, because we already know about that. Like, that's kind of old news if you're still bringing up that point that Joe Biden was, dead as a doornail and had an auto pen to write laws. Obviously, we know about that. We know about Barack Obama and the Clinton campaign making Russiagate a hoax to go after Donald Trump and ramped up warfare against Russia. We already know about this. And if you're bringing this up in 2025, you're late to the party. You're late to the damn party. But the reason I keep bringing this up in attention is because of how significant this is. This is outside Jeffrey Epstein. This is outside just America. And this involves and impacts everybody. Everybody that is connected in some way or form to this cabal, to the cabal of pedos, to the cabal of, the aristocrats and the oligarchs that have people on their puppet strings to do these heinous acts for blackmail and deception. Again, I recommend people go check out Whitney Webb's book, One Nation Under Blackmail, because it puts it perfectly. It puts the whole thing perfectly in the fact that this is not just about, adults performing sexual acts on minors or exploiting them sexually. This goes beyond that. This is about the power structure. This is about the influence it has on everything that we have in Western society, in Western hegemony, the billionaires, the bankers, the people that fundamentally control every aspect of our lives. They depend on this blackmail deception. And if word got out about this, they have to do something. They have to do something. I mean, look at what happened with Virginia Giuffre, who at the time was Virginia Roberts. She was the top Epstein accuser. And she was, making a name for herself when she went on ABC. She went on the big major networks. And ABC, we shown that video that Project Veritas dropped, that ABC News had to cover up the story, cover up the interview of Virginia Roberts because it affected the royals. It listed Prince Andrew as one of the abusers, so they couldn't release that information. And it just been kept going on and on and on. They tried to make up, dramatics, and they tried to squash it down, make up conspiracies, lie to the general public. They tried to spin in an obvious direction. And then just recently, Virginia Giuffre, who was hit in a school bus accident, they never investigated why this school bus driver was driving, ridiculously on a back road and smashed into her, causing her to be hospitalized. But on top of that, she recently deceased. And nobody looked into that. Nobody investigated. Nobody found it very convenient that as more information was being released about Jeffrey Epstein, that one of the top accusers just magically died. And the family of Virginia Giuffre is speaking out about this. And they live in Australia. They're forced to live in Australia because, the United States was never going to treat them with kindness. They were never going to do any justice. So they went elsewhere. They had to be exiled to Australia. And Australia I guess, was part of this cover-up. So that's why I keep harping on this, because it involves more countries than just the United States. It involves way more people than just Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. And I'm sick and tired of people trying to cover this up and make it not a big deal, or, oh, it's, you know, it's not important right now. What is important is Trump's doing a great job by getting ICE to crack down on immigrants. And I just find it so laughable that, you know, people are praising Donald Trump to crack down on migrants who they suppose are, you know, fans of the playground, and they're pedophiles, and they're the ones, you know, exploiting minors for sexual pervertedness. But yet, we know the biggest scandal, the biggest group of people that are committed in doing these acts are the billionaire class, and we don't even touch them. We don't even mention about them. And if we do mention about them, we're deemed awful people. And that's why people are going after Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're going after Thomas Massie. They're trying to oust these people for speaking out about this, for being critical, for saying that Jeffrey Epstein is associated with the Israeli intelligence, which is kind of obvious to people. Kind of very obvious when all the information is there. I mean, there's a reason why his temple is in the exact pattern and color scheme as the Israeli flag. It's kind of obvious when prime ministers and Israeli officials visit his Manhattan apartments numerous times, over and over again, when he was still alive and part of this sexual exploitation scheme. It's pretty obvious to people that there's deep connections involving numerous amount of companies, numerous amount of countries, numerous amount of highly regarded individuals that they don't want to release the information out to the public, because that will lose them the power and ability to manipulate. They lose that blackmail. Their reign of terror is over. Their reign of terror is over. That's why they'll do everything to try to stop this as much as possible, even try to silence out their top accuser. So, and of course, even with all this, Trump is still trying to blame this as a hoax, which I find it so hilarious that the guy who kind of really ramped it up into mainstream terms, I mean, Donald Trump went on to Fox News and told people that, yeah, we're thinking about releasing the Epstein files. Dan Bongino, same thing. We got to keep talking about the Epstein files. Kash Patel, same thing. Epstein files. Pam Bondi, same thing. Epstein files. Caroline Levitt, same thing. Epstein files. And then all of a sudden, they're non-existent. All of a sudden, you know, I got into office. I went to a dark room. They showed some archive footage, you know, maybe some secret angles of the JFK assassination. And then I decided, you know, we don't need to worry about Epstein. Yeah. So here's Donald Trump, even after all this, still doing what he does best, trying to cover up a major scandal that should be the highlight of his career. This should be making headlines constantly. This is what he campaigned on. And his top campaign issue, he's not even following through.
Your Justice Department is also sending some of the Epstein files over to the House Oversight Committee today. Are you in support of them releasing all of them?
Keeping it open.
If they wanted to release,
people shouldn't be hurt, but I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that it could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be. You know, people, because he knew everybody in Palm Beach. I don't know anything about that, but I have said to Pam and everybody else, give them everything you can give them, because it's a Democrat hoax. That's just a hoax. The whole Epstein thing is a Democrat hoax. So we had the greatest 7 months in the history of the president.
So it's amazing he's contradicting himself within the same statements. You know, I don't care if they release this information, but, you know, there's very predominant people, especially, you know, people in West Palm Beach. Oh, that was where, help me. Mar-a-Lago is located in West Palm Beach, right? That's where Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were top guests at Mar-a-Lago, and Donald Trump. It's been, you know, cited that Donald Trump met Melania Trump through Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, I can't confirm that. That's just the suspicion that was from biographers that were writing books about how Trump and Melania met. And there's been connections about certain networks related to Jeffrey Epstein. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein was a frequent guest at Mar-a-Lago. And Virginia Roberts, the top accuser, was working at Mar-a-Lago at the time that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell scooped her up and made her a victim of his sexual just deviance. Like, it's just crazy that Donald Trump is just an absolute embarrassment to continue on making this sound like a Democrat. Oh, it's a Democrat hoax. Democrat hoax. You campaigned on it. You riled people up. You got people so engaged that they've consistently been talking about this. And then you had the nerve to go out, pretend that people just got amnesia all of a sudden, and say, oh, it's just a hoax. There's no files, actually. Jeffrey Epstein who? That's just a character from a Looney Tunes cartoon. That's not an actual real person. Don't look into the files. I don't care if they release it, but, there's very predominant people that I don't want to be released. So, I'm just going to say it's a hoax. I'm still going to say it's a hoax. Hysterical that he's wearing a Trump hat that says Trump is right about everything. As he's saying that the Epstein files that he made center attention is considered a hoax. Still at this point. Kind of hilarious. But I think this could also be why he's still continuing on. Why he considers Jeffrey Epstein, the client list, all this a Democratic hoax, is because new email release. This is leaked emails reveal Jeffrey Epstein's connections to the surveillance industry. This is from Reason. It says, after his first arrest of sex crimes, Jeffrey Epstein tried to get into a new line of work, surveillance. In 2015, he partnered with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak to invest in a security tech startup called Reporty Homeland Security, now known as Carbine. Leaked emails show that Epstein was using Barak to seek out opportunities in the surveillance industry and build connections with powerful figures around the globe, including American businessman Peter Thiel. Go figure. Go figure. If only we knew this in advance. If only people like Whitney Webb, who has said numerous times over and over again through her reporting that the tech bro industry, Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, Elon Musk, Larry Ellison of Oracle, these are the same globalists that people complain about the WEF and Bill Gates. They're all part of the same cabal of master elite criminals. These are people that are sinister to the bone. Doesn't matter what part of the game they play, whether they're right wing or left wing. They're part of the same faction. They're still part of the same cabal of people. And considering the fact that the Trump administration is coordinating with Palantir to build a mass surveillance dome over America to surveil Americans, yeah, no wonder Donald Trump would take back everything you said during the campaign about releasing the Epstein files and say it's an absolute hoax. As soon as he signed the paycheck away to Palantir, as soon as he, got his campaign contribution from Israel and become a huge, huge supporter for Israel, more so than any other politician in America, especially any president, of course, there's direct connections to Palantir and Israel. The former director of Israeli signal intelligence and two people in Russia, Vladimir Putin's circle. After he was first caught sexually exploiting teenage girls, Epstein had pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution in 2008. He served a little over a year in detention. Meanwhile, he invested his wealth in bizarre projects, including a ranch to breed women with his DNA and efforts to identify a mysterious particle that might trigger the feeling that someone is watching you, according to the New York Times. The leaked emails show that Epstein was also interested in more mundane means of spying on and manipulating people, which overlapped with the technologies governments often pursue. This interest crossed borders. Barack's email inbox was quietly posted by Distributed Denial of Secrets, a website widely considered to be a successor to WikiLeaks, on a file-sharing platform for verified journalists and researchers in May 2025. The contents came from Handala, a hacker group named for a Palestinian cartoon character that had been leaking files taken from senior Israeli officials for several months. Although the emails were posted without technical metadata or cryptographic signatures that would allow their authenticity to be verified, they include dozens of images, videos, voice recordings, and scanned documents from Barack and his friends and family that have never been published elsewhere. They also include information that was not publicly known at the time of the email leaks, including a reference to Epstein's birthday book. The emails below, which have not been published elsewhere, paint a picture of Epstein as a man very eager to be the nexus between private money and public surveillance. While they were hammering out the Repartee investment, Epstein invited Barack to come to a meeting for Thiel, co-founder of PayPal, and the surveillance contractor Palantir in May 2014. Although Barack couldn't make that meeting, Epstein insisted that Barack spend real time with Peter Thiel and offered to set up a dinner the following month. So, there you go, folks. That is why this is such a big deal. This is why there's such a big cover-up. This is why. Because it's not just, oh, Democrats, oh, Republicans, oh, Trump, oh, Clintons. No. It involves way more people. Way more people. Very, very top influential investors, very top influential bankers, very top influential dignitaries from all around the globe. And like I've said, it is an international scandal. This is not just America anymore. This should be the top pages of everywhere in the world, because we are seeing more and more information being released of more victims elsewhere in the world that are part of this. That even though Jeffrey Epstein supposedly self-deleted himself, we'll just say that for, YouTube censor purposes. Even though they claim that, the activity is still going around. He still has bank accounts. He still has his finances being invested into elsewhere. So the question remains, how is Jeffrey Epstein, how is his money still being operated when he ceases to exist and Ghislaine Maxwell is supposedly locked up in a federal facility? How are they still, putting money into banks? How are they still investing into these private equities? How are they still able to finance themselves when they don't have control of their finances? And also, how did Jeffrey Epstein, basically a math tutor, if you look at the history of this guy, a math tutor from the Dalton School in New York, become the richest financier? Like, obviously this guy, maybe he's good at math. Maybe he's good at, calculating numbers. But how does he become one of the most successful billionaires to date? How this guy that basically came from nothing was able to make a huge name for himself, to buy properties all around the world and buy himself a luxury island where he can extort young women and young boys and other people to this island with false claims of contacting, model agencies and making them turn into, movie stars and rock stars. And we're going to set you up with predominant people so you can get ahead in life. How is that allowed to happen? So there's obviously a lot more to this story that we can go on. But luckily, this rally is bringing a lot of attention. I, applaud Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey and even Ro Khanna Even Ro Khanna, as much of a schmuck he is elsewhere, he's able to put his differences aside and focus on this predominant issue because, as Marjorie Taylor states, this shouldn't be a politicized issue. It should be a matter of right and wrong. Do you believe that it's right for billionaires to traffic your kids and use them for sexual exploitive measures and exploit and blackmail those people among other people in part of this, escapade of criminality? Is that allowed to happen? No. You wouldn't want that with, migrants and illegal immigrants. That's why you're cheering on ICE to kick them out and deport them. So why are you allowing this to happen? Why are you allowing this to happen? What are you trying to gain by keeping this covered up?